This is a May Luna Media production.
Hey, and welcome to Synaptic Soul, the podcast where science meets spirit, and we get real about the beautiful and brutal and magical mess of being human. I'm your host, Ava Marie Anderson, writer, mystic, multi-dimensional mischief maker. Quick disclaimer, you may hear the occasional snort, sigh, dramatic flop from my two French bulldogs, Rocky and Rambo. They're the soundtracks of my life, my soul companions, and honestly, the real stars of the show. Someday we'll dedicate a full episode to their role in my daily rituals, emotional healing, and wild spiritual life. But for now, just know that they're always close by, snoring their support. Let's dive in. Most people imagine spiritual awakening as a kind of peaceful epiphany, like maybe something out of a movie montage. Flickering candles, a deep breath on a yoga mat, and then your sudden knowing of your entire life's purpose beneath a starlit sky. And sometimes it is, but more often than not, awakening doesn't arrive gently. It doesn't whisper its presence or knock politely at the door. It breaks things. It tears through your life like a wildfire. And it burns away everything false, often before you even have the tools to understand what's happening. In nearly every spiritual tradition around the world, from indigenous medicine paths to Eastern mystical systems, a true awakening begins with rupture, and with collapse, and with chaos. In my own life, it wasn't a calm voice from the cosmos that marked the beginning. It was a series of painful and disorienting losses, relationships that shattered under the weight of truth, a body that began breaking down, a growing sense that I could no longer play the roles that I had been performing to survive. I remember lying awake at night, my nervous system buzzing and my thoughts spiraling and feeling like I was coming completely undone. And not in a poetic way either, in a what the heck is happening to me kind of way. And it wasn't until much later that I learned that this is one of the most common ways an awakening begins, through what mystics and alchemists would call as the blackening phase. In Jungian psychology, it's that psychological dismemberment that precedes rebirth. From a neuroscience perspective, what we experience as existential collapse is often a neurological and psychological reorganization. The default mode network, which is the part of your brain associated with your ego and your inner narrative and your sense of identity, it begins to quiet. And this can be triggered by meditation or loss or trauma or even a psychedelic experience. But when the default mode network softens, you begin to lose your grip on who you thought you were. And that can be terrifying because all that scaffolding that we have built to survive, the people-pleasing and overworking and identity as performance, it all begins to collapse. And spiritually, it's often called the dark night of the soul. And it's important to say that the dark night isn't like a bad mood. It's not some low vibe period. It's your sacred initiation. It's your soul's refusal to let you keep living a lie. And it'll strip you bare until all you have left is the truth. And that truth might be simple, but it's never easy. It might sound like, I don't know who I am anymore, or I can't keep doing this. But from that moment, however messy, it all begins. And that's the journey of becoming. From a quantum standpoint, the collapse isn't just symbolic, it is literal. In quantum physics, the wave function represents all possible states of being. It is a cloud of potential. But when observed and when measured, it collapses into one reality. An awakening is, in some sense, a collapse of false timelines, a decoherence of all the performative cells that you've maintained in order to be accepted. It's the moment of a soul awakening, is the moment that your system says, no more. You're no longer willing to observe the version of yourself that was built on fear. And in that refusal, in that quantum choice, a new reality begins to crystallize. But first, chaos, disillusion, disorientation. You lose friends, and you lose interest, and you lose roles and rhythms that once felt safe. And your body might rebel, like fatigue or inflammation or strange sensitivities. And your mind questions everything. And grief is enormous, but not just for what you lost, but for how long you lived without knowing that you were asleep. And that grief has to be metabolized, not bypassed, because grief in the awakening process is sacred. It's the burning ground on which the next version of you will rise. And then here's where it gets even more quantum. According to the physicist David Bohm, reality is a holographic and implicate. It means that all the information of the whole is encoded into every part. So you don't just awaken to a new version of yourself. You awaken to the fact that you are the whole, that the cosmos isn't out there, it is in you, and that the collapse of the old self is also the remembrance of the self with a capital S. And that self has infinite access to all the wisdom in the world. And unfortunately, all that wisdom is first accessed through your pain. And pain in this context isn't a failure of spirituality. It low-key is spirituality. It's the soul's alarm system saying, you've outgrown this version of yourself. And then the awakening process isn't often about becoming somebody new. It's about shedding everything that isn't true. The roles and the masks and the timelines that you inherited instead of chose. And that shedding can look like falling apart, but in truth, you're not. You're not falling apart. You're falling inward into the deeper layers of who you've always been. This is why awakening often follows death. Death of a loved one, or a marriage, or a career, or a version of self. Because death is a great clarifier. It reveals what's essential, and it breaks the illusion of permanence. Awakening doesn't ask you to pretend that life is easy. It asks you to see everything as sacred, even when it's devastating. And probably even especially then. So if you're in the chaos right now, if you're losing people and losing clarity and losing your grip, let me tell you, this is not your failure. It's your invitation. This is your breakdown before breakthrough moment. And it's the anatomy of awakening beginning to pulse through your life. You're not going backwards. You're going deeper. This episode is brought to you in part by one of my most favorite humans on this spinning planet, Morgan Garza, and her book Soul Magic. If you've ever felt like your power was just waiting beneath the surface, or like there's something ancient and electric inside of you ready to be reclaimed, then this is the book that helps you remember. Soul Magic is not just a read, it is a summoning. It's filled with rituals and stories and the kind of grounded spiritual wisdom that doesn't talk at you, it talks with you. Morgan writes like a soul sister, a cosmic cheerleader, and a priestess all rolled into one. And it's a must-have for anyone on the path of awakening, reclaiming. So grab your copy at morgangarza.com or wherever books are sold, or bless someone else's journey and gift it. Because real magic's meant to be shared. That's Soul Magic by Morgan Garza. You'll feel it in your bones. So awakening doesn't descend like a single bolt of lightning. It unfurls itself slowly, layer by layer, kind of like the peeling of skin after a sunburn. It's tender, and it's raw, and it's impossible to reverse. Each layer demands a different kind of presence, a different kind of surrender. So what many people think of as a spiritual awakening is often the culmination of a series of inner revolutions that take place across your mind and your emotions and your body and your soul. And these aren't separate compartments of the self. They're just deeply entangled. They're like threads in a multidimensional web. Tugging on one pulls the others into motion. And the segment's not linear. It is a spiral staircase that most of us will cycle through multiple times, often more than once in the same year, week, and even day. An awakening isn't neat. The first is usually the mental awakening. It's that moment where your thoughts begin to feel unfamiliar. And it might arrive in the form of a sudden question, the kind that won't leave you alone, like, I don't know, what if I've been wrong about everything that I believe in? You might find yourself staring out the window while driving, realizing that you have been repeating the same internal narrative for years. And it's not even yours. Like, you inherited it from your mom or from the culture, from the collective. Mental awakening is what happens when the internal programming begins to glitch. It is the realization that your thoughts are not facts, and the stories that you tell yourself about who you are and what is possible were coded into you long before you had the chance to choose them. So, from a neuroscience standpoint, this phase is marked by the slowing down or interruption of established neural pathways. So the brain is an efficiency machine. It will always default to the known. But when you awaken mentally, when your brain enters a state of neuroplasticity, that prefrontal cortex begins rerouting responses. Your hippocampus, which stores your memory, starts reorganizing what it means to be you, and the anterior cingulate cortex, associated with error detection and self-reflection, begins to light up like a Christmas tree. You become capable of metacognition. So you begin thinking about your thinking. And that's no small thing. It is literally one of the key neurological features that distinguishes an awakened human from one that has been running on survival autopilot. So mentally awakening means that you begin seeing the matrix not just outside of you, but within you. And as the mind shifts, the heart begins to quake. And this is the onset of the emotional awakening, and it is not gentle. Suddenly, things that you thought you were over return with a vengeance. So old grief surges through your chest without warning, or a single scent or a song or a memory can send you spiraling into tears. And you feel raw and exposed and often irrational. But it's not a regression, it's a release. Your emotional body is the storage vault of everything the mind couldn't process. So for years, maybe even decades, you stuffed feelings into the shadow. Rage, loneliness, shame. And now those energies rise up not to destroy you, but to liberate you. So emotions are energy in motion. They're vibrational messengers designed to move through the body and not get stuck in it. An awakening requires that you actually finally listen to them. Psychologically, this layer is governed by the limbic system, particularly the amygdala and hypothalamus, which regulates emotion, memory, and stress response. So as repressed trauma rises, your body may go into temporary fight or flight mode. And it's not because you're in danger, but it's because you're finally safe enough to feel. Spiritually, this is the realm of the inner child. This is the part of you that still lives in that energetic timeline of a moment that you never got to process. You might feel like you're mourning your entire childhood or grieving losses that you never realized you carried. And it's not indulgence. It's an emotional alchemy. It is how you turn pain into presence. Like, feeling fully is the gateway to healing deeply. And the heart, by the way, generates an electromagnetic field far more powerful than the brain. So when you awaken emotionally, you begin to emit a new frequency. And it's one of honesty and softness and coherence. And then everything in your life begins to shift in response. But awakening doesn't stop at the level of thought or feeling. The next phase is the most bewildering. It's the physical awakening. This is when your body begins responding to the shifts occurring in your consciousness, and it does not feel mystical. It can feel exhausting and uncomfortable and even frightening. You might wake up just buzzing or having, I don't know, electricity or whatnot in your hands and your feet. Some people experience shaking and nausea and headaches and intense fatigue. Others feel like they're on fire during meditation or in moments of huge emotional release. And these symptoms aren't random, it's all energetic. Your nervous system's trying to stabilize a new level of coherence. And your vagus nerve, which is the primary nerve of your parasympathetic nervous system, plays a huge role in how your body regulates these changes. So when you stimulate it through humming or breath work or singing or even laughter, you begin to restore balance. You come home to the body as a safe container for awakening. And physically awakening also invites you into a new relationship with nourishment, movement, rest. You might find yourself craving grounding foods and rejecting stimulants or suddenly needing to be in nature. And you might find that certain environments feel abrasive or that your skin becomes hypersensitive. And it's not hypersensitivity in a pathological sense, it's just expanded sensory awareness. Your body's becoming more finely attuned to subtle energy, and this is an evolutionary advantage, which is not a weakness. There's a yogic model of Kundalini rising, which is a way to understand what's happening here. In that framework, the dormant energy at the base of the spine becomes activated and begins to rise through the chakras, which then clears the blockages and upgrades the nervous system. So whether you see this as symbolic or literal, the result is the same. Your body's no longer a passive shell. It literally becomes an oracle. And then at some point, often after navigating months or years of internal rewiring, you begin to feel it. It's that unmistakable shimmer of the spiritual awakening. It might come through as a dream so vivid that it feels like a past life. Or maybe it's just like a moment in nature where everything around you just pulses with consciousness. Maybe it's a sense of knowing that appears in your chest before your mind can even make sense of it. It's not the beginning of an awakening, though. It is the culmination of your willingness to dismantle everything else. And a spiritual awakening is the remembrance that you're not separate from Source. It's the realization that divinity is not above you or outside of you. It is encoded within your cells. It's not performative, it's embodied. Quantum physics calls this non-local consciousness. It's the idea that awareness is not confined to the body or the brain. So you are not a brain with a body. You are consciousness having a human experience, and you are entangled with the field of everything. It's the 0-point field, the place of infinite potential in quantum theory, and it mirrors the mystic's experience of the void, which is an ocean of possibility from which all form emerges. And as you spiritually awaken, you no longer see the world as linear or solid. You begin to experience life as symbolic and relational and multidimensional. Everything becomes a message. Every moment holds a mirror. And you realize that the world does not happen to you, it reflects through you. And this is also when you start to perceive time differently. It's the veil between dimensions thins, and you might feel connections to ancestors and guides and maybe even future versions of yourself. There's the many worlds interpretation of quantum theory that suggests that multiple realities are unfolding simultaneously. And a spiritual awakening allows you to glimpse these parallel lives, not just as concepts, but as like felt experiences. You begin to understand that past lives are not behind you, and future selves are not ahead of you. They're all now happening in an ever-expanding spiral of consciousness. and you're at the point of convergence. Spiritual awakening is not the final layer, because there is no final layer. As soon as one aspect of you awakens, another aspect steps forward to be seen. And then the mind repatterns, and the heart opens deeper, and the body clears more, and then the soul expands again. It is a recursive journey. Each cycle reveals a more subtle frequency and a deeper level of truth. And you'll visit these layers again and again, each time with more compassion, each time with more reverence for the sheer complexity of being alive. You're awake. You're woven into the quantum fabric of existence. If you haven't caught on by now, awakening isn't just a process of becoming. It's the ritual of undoing. It's the death of identities that you didn't even know you were clinging to. It's the undoing of roles and masks and protections and illusions. But in that unraveling, you begin to meet the truth of who you are. But nobody talks enough about the brutality of it, the sacred violence of awakening, the part where your inner scaffolding collapses, nothing makes sense anymore. We use the phrase dark night of the soul so often in spiritual spaces, but few actually speak of its true death. It's not just a hard week. It is a descent, a dismantling, a sacred disorientation. And it's often the very soil in which the most luminous forms of beauty begin to take root. There's a moment in every awakening, often early on, but sometimes multiple times throughout, where everything feels like it's falling apart. And not in the way that it does when you're just overwhelmed, but in the way that tells you that this isn't just emotional, this is existential. Like the relationships that used to ground you now begin to feel hollow. And the career that once made you feel accomplished now feels like a betrayal of your soul. And you stop relating to your routines, your surroundings, your own internal dialogue. It's like walking around in a life that no longer fits, in a skin that's too tight and a name that sounds foreign in your own mouth. It's the ego death. It's the collapse of the constructed self. And it's the version of you that was shaped to survive your family and your culture and your trauma. But when that false self begins to dissolve, it feels like a death. Because in a really, very real way, it actually is. And grief is the natural consequence of that death. But it's not the kind of grief that comes with closure or a clean break. It's that kind of grief that hovers, and it drips, and it reopens itself over and over and over again. You grieve the person that you pretended to be. You grieve the years that you spent asleep. You grieve the times that you silenced your intuition just to be loved, or just to belong, or just to be safe. And that grief is sacred. From a psychological standpoint, it's the process of de-identification. It's the mind releasing the structures that it used to define itself. From a mythological standpoint, this is the journey of Inanna, the Sumerian goddess who descends into the underworld, stripping away one layer of identity after another until she stands naked before the void. And her story is your story. To awaken is to descend, to be undressed by your soul until all that's left is essence. During this phase, many people enter what could be described as a psychic liminal space. It's the void. It's the space between no longer, but not yet. You're not who you were, but the new self hasn't fully arrived. And this in-between phase is deeply uncomfortable, especially in a culture obsessed with productivity and certainty. But in the language of the nervous system, the void is essential. It's a parasympathetic reset. It's the space where true repair happens. Biologically, The body needs to rest after every major reorganization. Physiologically, or psychologically rather, the ego needs time to adjust to the loss of its own scaffolding. Spiritually, it's the cocoon. It's that pause before the wings form. But because we've been conditioned to associate stillness with failure, many people panic here. They try to rebuild too quickly or they go back to what they know. But the void isn't meant to be escaped. It's meant to be met because it usually holds something super profound. And that's the blueprint for what's next. So, from a quantum lens, the void mirrors what physicists refer to as the 0 point field. It's the energetic space where all potential exists, but nothing has yet been chosen. It is pure waveform, it's pre collapse, and this is where you are in this phase. You're alive in infinite possibilities, but you're not yet collapsed into a single reality. And so you feel aimless and lost and depressed. But it's only because you haven't chosen the next frequency yet. You're still recalibrating. You're releasing the residue of old timelines, and your intuition, which may go quiet in the void, it's not gone. It's just gestating. It's preparing to speak from a new level of consciousness. And the void's also where the nervous system repatterns. After prolonged stress or trauma, the nervous system often becomes stuck in hyperarousal, which is fight or flight, or hypoarousal, which is freeze or collapse. The awakening process brings awareness to these patterns. Like, you start to recognize how often you have lived in survival and how little rest you've truly allowed. Integration during this time looks like honoring your capacity, like letting your body rest without guilt, and giving your heart some space to cry without trying to fix it. It's like letting the questions hang in the air without rushing toward an answer. It's nervous system resensitization. It's coming back to your body as a safe and sovereign space. And it's during this brutality, this unraveling, that something astonishing begins to happen. It's beauty. Unexpected beauty. And not the kind that comes from aesthetic alignment or spiritual posturing. It's the kind that emerges when you're so cracked to even pretend anymore. When your rawness becomes its own kind of power. Like, you begin to notice how a stranger's smile can undo you, or how your own breath can bring you to tears, or how silence starts to feel sacred. And you cry, not because you're broken, but because you're actually feeling again. You notice the birds singing. You love the scent of the rain. You begin to find reverence in the ordinary. And that's the soul's quiet return. I guess what's so stunning about this stage, though, is that the beauty doesn't come after the brutality. It emerges through it. That same breakdown that dissolves you is the very thing that made space for joy to be real. And the joy isn't naive. It's earned, and it's cellular, and it lives in the body like a song that you remembered from before you were even born. The nervous system that once flinched in fear now hums in resonance. The heart that once armored itself now pulses with permission. And you don't feel invincible, but you do feel sovereign. This is what it means to rise, not to escape pain, but to integrate it, to carry it like water, just fluid and flowing and no longer drowning you. In the ancient Egyptian mysteries, the goddess Ma'at was the keeper of truth and balance. And at the time of death, one's heart was weighed against a feather. Only those who had lightened their hearts through living in truth could pass on. And an awakening is this weighing. It's this self-reckoning. And the more truth you allow in, the lighter your heart becomes. And it's not because you bypassed pain, but it's because you let it all change you. You begin to understand that beauty isn't in perfection. It's in presence. And brutality isn't punishment. It's purification. You're not awakening in spite of your pain. You're awakening through it. And so we spiral, and then we rise. This episode is supported in part by Sage App, aka the app that's basically a metaphysical multivitamin. It's like having a spiritual sanctuary in your pocket minus the incense smoke in your purse. It's also where I host my new moon manifestation clubs, which, if you know, you know, we go deep. So if you're ready to stop doom scrolling and start soul scrolling, download Sage in the App Store or Google Play and then step into a more intentional, magical version of your day. That's SAGED, like sage, but with an app. Back to the episode. One of the hardest parts of awakening is that it often doesn't look the way that we expect it to. Like, there's no guidebook. There's no blinking sign in the sky. There's no clear moment when your soul gently whispers, "Congratulations, you are now spiritually evolving." In fact, many of the signs of an awakening feel like a breakdown. Like it's inconvenient and it's emotional and it's strange and you don't know what to call them. But once you have the language and once you recognize what's happening in your system, your field, and your perception, you begin to reclaim the process. And you begin to trust that you are not broken, but that you're becoming. Signs of an awakening show up differently for everyone because consciousness evolves through the unique architecture of your nervous system and your karmic blueprint and your energetic design. But there's patterns. There's markers that tend to appear across the board. And one of the most common early signs is a sudden intolerance for inauthenticity. It's the relationships and the environments and the conversations that you used to tolerate that now feel energetically repulsive. And it's not because you've become judgmental, but because you've become more attuned. So what once kept you comfortably numb now leaves a static buzz in your body. And your nervous system, now no longer surviving in fight or flight, starts to detect dissonance, and it'll no longer let you ignore it. And you might feel that your emotions intensify. Like you cry over commercials or rage at injustices that you once scrolled past. You feel moments of inexplicable euphoria followed by grief that seems to come out of nowhere. And from a scientific lens, this is your limbic system, the seat of your emotional processing, entering a new phase of responsiveness. It's no longer repressing or intellectualizing. It's moving. The amygdala in particular becomes highly activated during periods of transformation. And it's not emotional instability, it's an emotional recalibration. Your feelings are catching up to your consciousness. And they're asking to be honored, by the way, not fixed. And then come the energetic shifts. There are the sensations in the body that you've never had a language for. Maybe it's the tingling in the crown of your head, or heat rising up your spine, or pulsing in your hands or your feet, or maybe just a chill during a truth spoken out loud. And these sensations are not the sign of illness. It's the subtle body coming online. In yogic tradition, these are the signs of prana or life force beginning to flow more freely through your energetic channels that correspond with your nervous system. You might feel fatigued. You might feel wired. You might feel both within the same hour. It's energetic repatterning, and it is sacred. And an awakening also invites you into a more symbolic relationship with reality. You begin to notice synchronicities and numbers repeating or animals appearing or songs echoing from something that you just thought. From a perspective of quantum entanglement, these synchronicities are not random. They're just the outward expression of the inner shift. So you're entangled with your environment, but then as your vibration changes, your external field reflects that back to you. And it's not superstition. It is resonance. It is coherence. It's your field reorganizing and then reality responding to the signal that you emit. And time begins to feel strange. Days stretch and collapse. You lose track of hours. You enter dream states more easily. And it's not disassociation. It's a shift in your brainwave dominance. You begin to spend more time in theta and gamma states, and those are associated with meditation and flow and nonlinear awareness. Theta is where that deep intuition and cellular memory lives. Gamma is the highest frequency of measurable brain activity, and it often accompanies like transcendent states of consciousness and heightened sensory perception. Your inner world becomes more vivid, and then your outer world becomes more malleable. And you might also feel drawn to solitude. And it's not because you're lonely, but it's because you're recalibrating. Like you start craving silence, not out of avoidance, but out of reverence. Social noise becomes too stimulating. Small talk feels unbearable. You begin to sense when someone's words are not aligned with their energy. And that sensitivity isn't a flaw, by the way, it is a feature. The mystics call it discernment. The modern nervous system calls it neuroception. It's the subconscious detection of safety or threat. And you are learning how to feel truth within your body. And it'll lead you out of illusion again and again and again. But yet, despite all of this, awakening it's still misunderstood. It's misunderstood both by those walking through it and by the world watching from the outside. And so let's clear some of the most damaging misconceptions. My favorite, awakening is love and light. It is not love and light, let me tell you. The truth is, awakening is grief, and it's rage, and it's silence, and it's surrender. And it is all of this before it becomes bliss. Like the light only reveals itself once the shadows have been named. And you're not doing it wrong because you feel pain. You're just doing it deeply. The next misconception, awakening is a one-time event. Oh dear. Awakening is not a switch. It is a spiral. And you don't awaken once and then just stay there. You awaken and then you integrate and then you forget and then you remember and then you shed and then you rise and you do this again and again and again. Each time, though, with more nuance. Each time with more truth. In indigenous teachings, this is the spiral path of wisdom. You revisit lessons from new levels of understanding. So you never regress. You only deepen. The next misconception is that you've got to be positive to be spiritual. And this is one of the most pervasive spiritual bypasses. Like, true spirituality is not about bypassing the shadow. It is about befriending it. There is nothing more spiritual than holding your grief with love or meeting your anger with curiosity. You need to make room for the full spectrum of your human experience. You're not less spiritual because you're messy. You're just more real. And listen, I'm of the opinion that the F word clears your throat chakra, so take that for what it's worth. The last misconception, if you're confused or isolated, you're doing it wrong. So pervasive. So confusion is a sign that old patterns are dissolving. Isolation is often protection. Your soul pulls you into stillness not to punish you, but to rewire you. You're not meant to awaken in a crowd. You're meant to awaken within so that when you reemerge, you're no longer seeking validation. You're actually offering vibration. So the more you normalize the signs, the less shame that you carry. The more you name what is happening, the less alone you feel. And the more you lean into your own unique unfolding, the less you compare your timeline to someone else's. Because you are not behind. You are not broken. You are not meant to have it all figured out. You're becoming and remembering and shedding the density that kept you numb to your own brilliance. Awakening isn't a destination. It is a devotion. And you're doing it beautifully. So if you've made it this far with me, if you've listened through the collapse and the cracking and the spiraling and the rising, you're already deep in it. You're not at the beginning, you are at the becoming. And your awakening isn't measured by what you know. It's measured by what you embody when nobody's watching. So just a couple of questions, just to reflect on and ponder on. What part of me is fully awake but still afraid to be seen? And what would it take to let my body and my voice and my life carry the truth in every single moment? So think about it. Ponder these. Let it be a part of your integration. Let your awakening land. And until next time, keep walking the spiral, man. You're the circuit. You're the cosmos remembering itself, and you are never alone. If you loved this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a glowing review. It helps more beautiful souls like you find this space. Because your words matter, your energy ripples, and every review is like a little spell of support for the Synaptic Soul mission. So until next time, stay curious, stay cosmic, and keep waking the F up.